Boo! Did I scare you? Happy Halloween, everybody. Tonight we will be painting one of the coolest Halloween minis on the market. The Halloween Knight from Reaper Minis. This spooky little dude has been haunting hobby store shelves since the year 2016. And although he is listed as a special edition miniature on the Reaper website, you can still buy him today. I bought mine well past 2016 and I highly recommend it. He's a great little mini. And without further ado, let's get right into the painting. Just like with all metal miniatures, our first step is to take him out of his packaging, give him a good look over, and then clean any excess flash that might be on the mini. This particular mini wasn't too bad. There were a couple pieces of flash that I did have to snip off in the end, and there were a couple of pieces of leftover flash from the initial molding process. And just some excess pieces of metal that I needed to file down, including in the head part itself. After all of the filing had been completed, it was time for a quick shower to make sure that we wash away any potential bits of extra metal or release agents from the molding process. After he was all dry from his shower, I gave him a very quick prime up with Vallejo Black Primer. As we watched this super immersive footage, I wanted to ask everyone what they were going to be for Halloween. I'm pretty lazy and low effort, so I'm just going to go as Clark Kent. I already wear glasses, and I just need a dress shirt and a red dye, which I have, and yeah, Clark Kent. Classic Clark Kent. Also, is anyone going to go trick-or-treating this Halloween? Any 30-somethings going to hit up the old trick-or-treating trail? Hey, this is a judgment-free zone, you know? If you want to go trick-or-treating, please, by all means, go for it. I mean, it's free candy. Trick-or-treating is free candy. After the priming was done, I hit him with a classic zenithal highlight. Then, after a few hours of letting the primer cure, it was time to paint. I wanted to start on the coolest aspect of this mini, which is, in my opinion, the pumpkin head. So I grabbed my spookiest shade of orange and gave it a nice base coat. After the base coating was complete, I went up a shade to a lighter shade of orange and made sure to avoid most of the deepest recesses in the head of the pumpkin. I made sure to avoid also getting any paint within any of the recesses on the face because they would be getting a much different color later in the process. For the final and lightest shade of orange, I made sure to basically only hit the center of the first highlight that I had added to the pumpkin head, and also used it as the final edge highlight for the facial features. The next step was to grab my goriest shade of red and to basically use that red to sketch out and only touch up the parts of the armor where the zenithal highlight had hit the most and are the most prominent. I've never really been able to get a good grasp of how non-metallic metals work, so I was really concentrating on this miniature. Based on how I understand non-metallic metal, my goal was to basically get a base coat down of the main color of the armor onto all of the lightest spots of the zenithal highlight. And then after we get down our lightest color, or the color that will act as the lightest color, in this case the red, we want to hit all of the negative space, or the darker spaces, with our deepest, darkest color. In this case I was using Rogue Shadow from Reaper as the base color because it's kind of blue, and I feel like blue shadows give off a spookier feel. After all the shadows have been filled in, I just started getting lighter and lighter shades of red and basically painting over the highest portions of the armor. only the raised portions. After each previous shade of red, when you go up to the higher shade of red, you basically just want to be really careful that you only hit the edge and a bit over the edge of what you're painting. And then for the final step, or the lightest shade, what you want to do is just basically touch all of the edges of what you were painting. That way it kind of gives off the illusion that light is hitting it from that specific angle, thus creating the illusion that light is hitting a metallic surface and glinting off of it. Once again though, I am a total noob when it comes to painting, and I think I did it correctly. I definitely could have probably gone higher in a lot of spots, or I've seen other painters in the past actually use white as their final shade. I'm at a point right now though where I feel that I probably would not put down the white in a correct space, and it would just look really awkward. So here's me putting on the final / lightest shade of red. And as you can see, I'm only basically hitting the top, the total top of all of those spots. I guess I should have tried putting down some white, because white is really transparent. So the red would have still shown through in most spots. Oh, well, we live and learn. Maybe next time. Maybe I'll buy another Halloween night. I personally love this mini. I think it's so cool. And now it is time to paint up the, what is this? Scale mail? It looks like scales. So I'm just going to call it the scale mail tacet. I'm not sure if that's a tacet. What I did was Google images of all of the names of armor on medieval knights, and the one that pointed at the grundle said tacet, so calling it tacet. I also wanted to paint that cool little Scully accoutrement on his right shoulder green as well, because I don't know, it just looks cool. I like the contrast between the red and the green. Just like with the armor and everything else, I started with the darkest shade of green that I was going to go for, and then worked up from there, essentially just using lighter shades of green every time. A good habit that I have picked up, and I recommend everyone else trying to as well, is choose the color that you want to be the base. So in this case, it's green. So what I did was I got my deepest shade of green, and then got the lightest shade of green as the highlight, and then also got the shade of green that I felt was the closest to the middle between the two, and used those to work my way up. This is the part of the painting where I committed the biggest sin. At least I feel like it was the biggest sin. I wanted to paint this up in non-metallic metal as well, and I really messed it up. I didn't want to create too much contrast on the mini, so I used the same gray color that I used to shade the armor. After the first base coat was down, I went in with my medium tone, which was actually just the main base tone with some white added to it, and kind of tried to sketch in the spots where I thought the natural light would hit it. I've never tried to paint non-metallic metal on such a big straight surface before, and it really kind of tripped me up, and it honestly confused me. I found it really hard to imagine where the light should go, and then to sketch out the proper spots. Also, a big mistake that I made, and you can see it quite clearly in these clips, is the ferrule of my brush had way too much water in it, so it was watering down my paint way too much. So what ended up happening was, you see the paint job itself is kind of blotchy, and it's not a smooth gradient, and that's because the paint was tending to pool in some spots. Luckily though, after messing up the shield like I did with that, I'm just going to call it a cloudy paint job, I kind of hit my stride on the main part of the shield itself. For this one, I just wanted to go with a non-metallic gold look, which so far I think was the kind of simplest one to do. Maybe it's just the nature of working with browns. I find browns really fun to work with and kind of super simple. And so for gold, because gold and brown go really well together, I started with a deep brown shade and then grabbed an amber color and worked up from there. Instead of using a darker and then a mid-tone for the gold non-metallic metal, I actually ended up just using white to highlight the amber itself. I'm not sure why, maybe it's because it's a yellow, but adding white to the yellow really worked as a highlight and just helped it kind of get to a lighter tone without changing the overall feeling of the color. I also did the same thing to the Knight's Scabbard, because on Reaper's website, it looks like the scabbard is also metal, so I figured why not? Let's just go with more gold non-metallic metal. I kind of feel like I want to paint everything in gold non-metallic metal going forward because it was super fun and easy to do. This was when I remembered that the knight also has a sword and really quickly painted up the sword and the sword arm. I feel like the sword hand came out better than everything else because I guess I had more of the technique down at the time and felt way more comfortable with it. And here's the final highlight that I was talking about. It's just the amber color with a healthy amount of white added to it, which at the end of the day really worked. I made sure to add the lightest highlight into places where I felt the light would come down, and I also tried to match it with the gray part of the shield. Don't think I did a good job. Also, my hand is more in focus in this shot. No idea what I was thinking there. Now that all of the metal was done, it was time to paint up the haunted spooky cape. The overall sculpt of the cape on this mini, I think, adds so much character. It really elevates the mini because it adds motion to his overall design. You know, he's not just kind of standing static, but he's standing probably in front of a full moon, and his cape is billowing in the wind. Because this guy is called the Halloween Knight, I figured that a deep blue color for his cape was the best option. Because he's called Halloween Knight. So obviously that means he only really has one night a year that he can party. And why would he want to go out with like a shabby yellow kind of cape, you know? He wouldn't want that. He would want a deep, haunted, spooky blue cape that looks like the night sky. And then just following the general pattern, like I said earlier, I got my darkest blue, my middle blue, and then my lightest blue, and painted them on there in a combination of going from darkest to lightest. I really need to paint more capes. I'm so bad at just kind of sketching out where the highlights should go on them. Like, that's a perfect shot where I feel that I left way too much of the deepest blue without adding any of the mid-tone to it. So it kind of just looks like almost at the end result almost looks like it's two different blues that are painted on in a pattern rather than looking like just the shadow of the actual blue that I want it to look like. I mean, whatever, it's a learning process. I'll get there one day. After the cape was done and the edges were all highlighted, I called it a night. Get it? Night, like with a K, like K-N-I-G-H-T. Not night like N-I-G-H-T, like Halloween night. Get it? Because it's night and he's a knight. And it's, what night am I saying? Here we have the Halloween Knight in all of his glory, ready to basically terrorize the town. Maybe go pillage some candy from some villages. And get up to just some general Halloween mischief. Also, I really wanted to illustrate exactly how bulky the Halloween Knight miniature is. So here he is next to one of the Emperor's finest. And here he is next to another Reaper miniature, the Crypt Guardian, who he honestly dwarfs. And the Crypt Guardian and the Halloween Knight are actually the same scale. And that is a wrap, everyone. Thank you very much for sticking around. If you did, I hope you all have a great spooky night, and I hope to catch you on the next video. Gundamonium Oot!